Hello, welcome to the Dreamers Podcast. I'm your host, Anne-Lyse, and I'm so excited that you decided to tune in for this amazing episode with Lonye Ford. She is the co-founder and CEO of Arlo Solutions, a company that focuses on offering intelligent cybersecurity management consulting and a bunch of other amazing services to the United States government. And today she's going to talk to us about how to make millions of dollars with government contracts. Because guess what? She just closed on a $28 million government contract. And today she's here to share all the gems. Lonye Ford, welcome to the Dreamers Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
So Lonye, tell me, what's your money story? What was your experience with money growing up?
I had none. So my story would be that of scarcity. I grew up not having money, but to be honest, I didn't realize necessarily growing up that I didn't have money. So I still was fulfilled. I came up in very humble beginnings, such as a lot of people. And so I have been in situations where I have went without and to the basics, from shelter to food. And so my beginnings were very humble. That's what I'll say.
I always, like to start from the beginning. Obviously, we were just talking before we started recording. You just had an article in Black Enterprise. You were featured and you talked about government contracting and how you are killing it in the government contracting world. And you just secured a big contract with the government, right? I think it's like $28 million. Exactly, right. I think it's always important not only to look at where the person is right now, but see like where they started from. And so I'm really looking forward to finding out more about your journey.
First, I want to say on camera, thank you so much. I know that I just told you this. I'm very seldomly emotional, but it was really a full circle moment for me to be on Black Enterprise. It really was. Growing up, there had not been a lot of representation for me. Some people are looking at fashion magazines. I really want to know, how does someone become a CEO? There was not a lot of outlets for that. You couldn't Google that. And so where you saw a lot of that was Black Enterprise. So to come from where I came from, to look at Black Enterprise magazine, like the mecca of CEOs, and then to be featured, myself and Arlene, it really meant a lot. So I want to say first, thank you for writing that article, for pitching us, and for really seeing and advertising what it is that we're doing. And as you mentioned, starting from the beginning, from Chicago, and then I joined the Air Force. And I accredit the Air Force with being one of the decisions that changed the trajectory of my life, because it exposed me to things I would have never been exposed to in my neighborhood. So exposure is so key to really put fire to change. Sometimes you just don't know what you can be if you've never seen it. So that really was the beginning of me really understanding where I can go. And then from there, from the Air Force, 10 years in the Air Force, there I learned IT, I learned cybersecurity, but more importantly, I learned the importance of allyship, of building partnerships, of ethically leading, of having difficult conversations, which are all very important to leadership. So my foundation as far as being a leader, I really learned a lot of that from the Air Force. I would say it gave me a different perspective of leadership, because I did learn a lot of leadership also from the streets of Chicago. And so from my transition to the Air Force, I did government contract, and I came out first, went back to Chicago, thought I was going to do some other things. I got into banking, I got into retail, and then I got back into IT, did government contract and working for companies. As I worked for companies, I built my business with my partner, Arlene. And that having the right partner, finding the right partner, I always say Arlene's like my partner soulmate, is really foundational to building a business. Because again, people are really what's important, the people that you have around you. So once I was able to click with Arlene, and we just grinded it out. I worked in the daytime. I had a son, I was working, and I was grinding, I was promoting. So I was in a club sometimes till 2:00 in the morning. And after the club, Arlene and I was researching new government contract and prepare to get up to go to free training and then go to work. And as you just mentioned, just recently, we received our first big prime contract, which was $28 million. So amazing. But I do want to say this, because when people hear you have a $28 million contract, don't come calling me, y'all. I don't have $28 million in my pocket. I don't have $28 million in the bank. $28 million is over a 5-year time frame. And on top of that, there's a whole lot of expenses that need to be paid. When people hear that we got a $28 million contract, we have big dollar signs on top of our head. It's great. We're not just getting a check for $28 million.
Well, again, congratulations on that, because
Thank you.
That's big. It's really inspiring to see Black women in a field like that. Cybersecurity, most times when you think of cybersecurity, you don't think women, you think men.
Absolutely.
So I know you mentioned that you learned about IT and cybersecurity in the Air Force.
The Air Force is the greatest service in the nation, but okay.
So I know you learned that, right? But then when you got out, you went into banking. So first of all, how did you go from Chicago to DC? Because again, we can spend a lot of time focusing on the result. Today, you guys are closed a really big contract. Your company is doing great. But talk to me about the process to move to DC and the grind.
So when I got out of the Air Force, I was familiar with Chicago. I really wanted to go back home. That's all. Even when I was in the Air Force, like, I can't wait to get back to Chicago. And so when I went back to Chicago, a couple of things happened. One, I learned, to be honest, I had outgrown my environment. And so I went through a few aha moments, I think, once I went home, but that was definitely one of them. And once I got there, I tried a couple of different things. I was the general manager of a Sears because I thought I wanted to do retail. Then I went through this competition to be a part of Fifth Third Bank. And so one of the seats. And in that process of doing banking, what I realized is that I had gotten accustomed to working for the government, who's really focused on a mission. And that really more so spoke to me versus just pure profit. The banking industry is a very sales-based, profit-based industry. But when you're young and naive, you're not looking at banking like that. You look at banking like, oh, they're serving the people. They're there to serve the people, but they're there to make money. It's heavily sales-driven. It was like being a salesperson, and I did not like it at all. So once I had that experience, I wanted to go back and support the government. And I had a TS clearance because I had came out of the military. One of my very best friends told me to come. You know, DC, they have a lot of IT jobs. Come there. So I did. I didn't have any money. I remember driving through a blizzard in my vehicle from Chicago to DC. I stayed with one of my very good friends that I was stationed with. I stayed on her air mattress for about maybe almost a year in DC as I started my first job. I really had to start from the bottom again. I guess my story is one of also like just recreating yourself. I knew I wanted to go out and try something different and get out of IT, and I did. And I realized I didn't like it. Okay, so what? Let's pivot to something else. And so I had the opportunity, thank goodness, with the friends that I had, allowed me a place to lay my head while I got myself together. That's how I got back to the DC area. And in the DC area, Chocolate City, it was amazing. It was so refreshing. Chicago is it's a diverse city, but it's very segregated. So everyone stays on their part of their land. Asians are here, Blacks are here, Spanish are here. There's really not a lot of interactions. And I didn't see a lot of Blacks, honestly, in positions of power. If you would go downtown and went to the financial district, it wasn't there. So when I came to DC, and I remember going to a boardroom, the first person that was a high up government official that walked into the boardroom, it was this Black guy with dreads. And I remember thinking like, this man have dreads at work? Like, I've never seen anything like this. Coming to DC was that next pivotal part in my life that really opened my eyes up to the possibilities, because Chocolate City is like Black excellence. And it truly is. And it gave me a different level of exposure that I hadn't had. And really, that's really what pushed me into owning a government contracting business.
So you said a lot just now. You talked about moving back to Chicago and realizing that you had outgrown your environment. You talked about your move to DC and seeing representation and seeing what was possible. And also, the time that you spent just trying to get started in DC and sleeping on your friend's air mattress. I think those are very, very important things, because a lot of times, again, we want to look at the results, but we don't necessarily realize the process. But you have to embrace the process, and it doesn't come easy for anyone. And I think a big part of it is getting uncomfortable. So, you
Absolutely.
moving back and realizing, hey, I'm actually past this, and moving to DC and realizing I could dream bigger. I think those are
Yes.
such great points that you highlight.
It is. I couldn't put it into words, but when I went back to Chicago, when I say I outgrew my environment, I would say that now I look at conformity as being like a sickness, because it is. People get so accustomed to I get up, I go to work, I go here, I do this, I come home, I get on Instagram, I go to sleep. Oh, let me start again. So when I came home and saw everybody in the same rigmarole, to me, it was like, it's stuck in a matrix. And I wasn't accustomed to the segregation anymore. I learned a lot in going to the military about people, about diverse people, about all color people, about all type of people. And I like that type of environment. And I excel in that environment. And I couldn't go back to the environment of feeling smothered that only these people are with these kind of people. And that didn't work for me anymore either. I didn't want to conform. I didn't want to get complacent. I didn't want to put myself in a position where now that's what I started doing. I realized very quickly, I need to get out of here, or I can see myself getting caught up in that conformity sickness.
You started Arlo Solutions in 2014. That first year, did you secure your first contract just like that?
Oh, girl, please. I thought I was going to secure my first contract. The funny thing is, I met Arlene through her husband, Taz. And I met him because we were both in promotions in nightlife, in the club industry. And he would say, oh, you have to meet my wife. And I would kind of blow it off. But when I started working with him in the club industry, he would come with all these spreadsheets. And I mean, the way they would audit and that wasn't typical. She had the expenses broken. I didn't know that she was doing that, right? Because he was coming with it. But even before we were put together, I realized, oh, we were actually working together because you were giving your husband all these spreadsheets, doing all the accounting. And so he put us together. At that same time, I had a company with 3 other ladies at the same exact time. But again, that's why I said it goes back to the right people. The company that I had with the 3 other ladies, it never took off. And a lot of it had to do with our personalities and a lack of trust. It's easy to get stuck in the beginning on getting everything perfect versus Nike, just do it. This other company is like, have to talk to another lawyer, have to get an operating agreement, have to do all, but to the point of like, we can't move forward. But we don't even have any money. So you stuck really on the wrong thing. Arlene and I together, and we got to business quick. We pulled an operating agreement off the internet, literally a template Arlene created. We both signed. Even with all what we've done, we still have that same agreement in place. That's how strong our trust is. And so we just had trust for each other very quickly, and it allowed us to move quickly. Though we didn't make money for a very long time, we didn't pay ourselves for 4 years to be exact. We continue to grow in our knowledge base constantly. We were constantly learning things, constantly going to free classes. There were so many different free resources out there because we didn't really have any money. We took them. We would get up like it was a job. We had 3 or 4 suits. We called them our uniform, and we would get up and go down to the SBA office, and we go to all their free training and just learn how to write a proposal, learn how to do pricing, because we had to do everything ourselves because we couldn't get any funding.
So how long did it take to secure the first contract?
We initially wanted to start with federal contracts. And federal contracts, because we wanted to go for the larger contracts, we wanted to go for the contracts that were cleared, so that you needed a clearance. People didn't look at us and see us in that light. So it was very difficult for us to get our foot in the door. People like us, they want us to do admin contracts. They want us to give simple acquisitions, which are contracts that's $10,000. And we didn't want to do that. We would turn that work down for a very long time. How we got our start was with the DC government, but we still kept our eye on the prize for federal. So as we were going after federal, we just started in DC because we had the opportunity to enter in the DC market, but we continued to really focus on the big contracts. So our first contract might have been maybe 2 years in.
So you spent 2 years just learning about this field that you were trying to get into. And it took you 2 years to secure the first contract. And then you said you guys didn't pay yourself for the first 4 years.
4 years.
What kept you motivated those 4 years?
Our vision. We were like crazy visionaries. Now, when I look back at it, I mean, almost to You may have to be insane to have the vision that we have. I always say your way ahead a lot of times is rooted in what's happened to you in the past or what you've seen. So we were only hearing no, but we still had this imagination. We would talk about the office that we were going to have. Our imagination was crazy. Our hustle and our grind, and it was us. We had the ability to feed off each other in a way that was very unique. So we kept each other really going, and our personalities matched very well. So I even tell people when they are looking for a partnership, find someone that's strong where you're weak. And you're going to see me out here talking, but Arlene might have created the deck, told me what I'm going to say, had a prep meeting with me. I may be the one talking. She doesn't want to do that. She wants to be back office. She wants to prepare. She jokes that she likes to manage the talent. And I'd like to be out here talking, right? And that worked, right? You need somebody to go out there and get the business. You need someone who has the technical. My skill set was cybersecurity, and that's the talent that she managed. I went out there and pitched cybersecurity, but she had to make sure the back office was straight. Even if you're an artist, you can't just go out there and do art and paint. You need someone that's also, how do I sell it? Where do I sell it? Where's my e-commerce? What's the compliance piece? What's my break even? Where's my accountant? You need that person too. And so Arlene is that person. And that's really what made us successful.
4 years until you started paying yourself. So how did you survive this whole time?
And then when we paid ourselves, it was very nominal. So it was not a lot. I was still working and Arlene was not working. They also had some things going on in nightlife too. So that was still paying her bills, but still tough. It was a tough situation for us financially. And then everything that we paid for, we just split it down the middle. Certain things we paid for, you wouldn't have to. We spent $6,000 on our first business plan. Some people would say you don't need to spend that much on a business plan. Everything we do, we go and look for the best person. It's always been our personality. I'd rather spend this money and get the best person. We got this person out of New York, and he was amazing. And what was so important about going through somebody with a business plan when you have a partner, it was things Arlene and I as a partner hadn't talked through. You have this vision, but you have to put this on paper. What's your break even? What do I need to do to get to that business? How many contracts? How much profit per person do I need to make? And so the business plan was pivotal for us. It gave us more of a bullseye and a focus. And that's how we stayed focused, by continuously putting plans in place. We put markers. We knew that our first 2 years was going to be this grind. We were prepared for it, and we knew that. And we had different phases that we aligned out. And that was just a part of our phase one. And we were accepting of that. The other part of Arlene and I's personality that worked well in the beginning was we really took every failure as an opportunity to learn. And I know that sounds so cliche, but it is so true. When we failed at writing a proposal, we went to the agency. I know we failed. Do you mind giving me a debrief? Can you sit here and tell me exactly why I failed? I'm not fighting you. I just need to know so I don't fail so bad the next time. And you know what it did? We gained allyship. Because all those people that we went to ask to break this down for us, they end up wanting to help us. All the people at the SBA. So we end up gaining so much partnership and support just by being vulnerable and saying, guess what? I don't know how to do this. I did try. You mind showing this to me? And that has really been another key to our success, just the amount of people in our village that has been willing to lean in and assist.
So you talked about the importance of being prepared, really, right? So you guys had these big dreams, right? But if you didn't have the cushion of, you continuing to work and Arlene having other source of income, then you probably would have given up because it didn't make sense, right?
Absolutely.
So it's only making sense because you guys were prepared and you had a financial cushion while you were chasing the dreams. And I think that is so, so important.
And the other important part was you do have to realize that sometimes you have to chase your dream on the side until your dream can really fund your life. And that's not fun. You have to be willing to sacrifice your time. You have to be able to sacrifice your sleep. Even in this age of, I need 12 hours of sleep, softer, gentler. Guess what? At the end of the day, if you want to make it big, you got to grind. You're going to miss sleep. You're going to be tired. You might not have work-life balance. I don't even believe in that anyway. But if you want to make it to the highest level, that's what you have to do. And it depends on where you want to be. You want to make it to the highest level, keep conforming, stay where you are, chill. But if you want to make it to the highest level, you're going to have to sacrifice. No matter what you see on all this get rich quick and these things out here.
I always say I don't believe in overnight success. We just see the end of the process.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
In the Black Enterprise article, you mentioned that now is a great time for minorities to get into government contracting. And I'm actually going to link the article in the show notes of the episode. But can you tell me more about why now is a good time?
Oh, for so many reasons. Something changed and shifted in the world. I will try not to get too political, but this shift in the world that I attribute to Donald Trump and COVID at the same time, something happened that made all people, all colors, take a step back and just really assess, in this particular case, how African Americans are treated in America. And that caused a ripple effect. And I always say that there are different lanes that we all play. And so, like for me, I'm not going to march. Not going to be as anybody frontline marching. Not marching, that's not my thing. But somebody marched and somebody needed to march. And then once they marched, somebody needed to say, okay, people are listening. Let me get some people elected into office. And then guess what we did? We got people elected into office. And then when those people got elected to office, guess what those people did? They put a cabinet in place that was for the people. And guess what that cabinet did? They put policies in place that allowed for us to excel financially. I look at the long game. What they did back then in marching is really why I'm here now, which means that's why it's my responsibility also to reach back once I get here, because I do understand that's one of the reasons that I'm here, because someone forced people to look and to change policy and to change laws. And that's why we're here now. And so this particular administration, it frustrates me a little when I hear the things about, oh, I'm waiting for my student loan, give me $10,000. You're thinking so small and about somebody giving you something. They gave you a policy. They gave you the opportunity to make millions. And you sitting here talking about, can I get $10,000?
So tell us about that policy.
The policies are, they have executive orders that Biden put in place for government contracting that now really put a forcing mechanism for the federal government to do more business with the Black and brown community. Initially, when they would say do business with small business, it's still not a lot of minorities that own government contracting small businesses. But that's different when you peel back the onion a little bit. Not only small business, how many Black women has businesses? How many Hispanic men, women have businesses? And that's what this government did. They didn't go surface level. They pulled back those numbers. Oh, out of 100%, 1.75% of Blacks have a small business that's doing, have contracts in the government contracting. And guess what? Once people saw the numbers, it doesn't matter race, creed, everyone is looking at it. And they said, oh, you're right. Something's wrong here. Let's come together and let's fix this. And I don't only mean just our community. I'm not here just because our people helped us. I'm here because people helped us. Men, white, Black, it doesn't matter. But people in general. So when I say community, I just mean community at large too. So I think the community at large, their eyes were open and the policy was kind of a forcing mechanism, even if their eyes weren't open. Now the president said, this is how you have to do business. And this is the percentage of funding I want to go to these businesses. So you're right in that space where, number one, big businesses need you, because now big business has to do business with small, underserved communities, not just small businesses. Well, a lot of what we do, we partner with the larger businesses for plenty of reasons. One, they have resources that we don't have. It's a lot easier for me to go into a large contract with a large vendor who can write to large proposals. And even if I have 5% of this contract, it's 5% of a large sum. And so one of our focus areas where we took this opportunity to really continue to leverage partners and partnership with not only the government, but really some of these very large defense contracting companies.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this with the Dreamers. I think it's very valuable information that most of us don't know about. So for anyone who's listening today or watching, who's like, okay, I want to look into this, how can they get started?
A really good start would be looking at the SBA's website. If we're talking about just GovCon, the government is the largest purchaser of goods and services in the nation. So they buy from tissue to cleaning to technology, anything that you can offer, the government has to purchase it. And they have to purchase it through a government contracting company. So I would say first would be really understand what service that you can offer, and then start researching, looking on SBA. Now that's separate from, you have to build your company, right? And that's operating agreements, making sure you have the right business structure in place. making sure you understand your finances, getting you a business plan. I know all people don't use business plans anymore, but I think that's very helpful. Those are some foundational things that you can start with. But I would say the first start is research, research, research.
And as far as training, you mentioned a lot of free training. Can you share some of the resources that they can use for free training?
Yeah. So really in every state or major city has a small business administration office. And within those SBA offices, they have training. And that training can be from how do you write a proposal to how do you finance. But they also have training just to how do you start your business. And to be honest, it's so much free training out there on like YouTube. You can get foundational training just Googling YouTube and TED Talks. We got training from everywhere, from books, from articles. We would just Google and research, and we would try to model ourselves. So it goes back to researching and using whatever you have at your disposal. And it doesn't cost you a lot. It really just costs you. You're sacrificing your time.
And how much do you need to get started in this space?
Our money was called sweat equity. And so we didn't start with any money, which is definitely a challenge because like I said, what we did, we paid half and half every time a bill came through. And where that became tough is when we won our first contract, our first major contract. We were always told that if you win your contract and you can take your contract to the bank will give you money. And we were very naive. And so we thought, oh, hey, bank, I won this contract. Can you fund me? They're like, oh, okay, let me get 2 years of your tax returns. I'm still broke. Definitely was broke 2 years ago. I'm still broke now. So the bank was like, hey, I'm not going to give you any funding. But at the same time, we won a contract and we didn't have any funding. And we end up getting an amazing accountant. And that's what I recommend as when people look into business, one of the first things you do, because your accountant doesn't have to be full time, but what an important role that you want to have in your company immediately. And she introduced us to something called factoring. And factoring is when you can borrow against your invoices, but that's private funding. And so we were much more successful getting private funding than we were with bank funding. And that's really how we funded. But we started with nothing. And you can run into some issues because of that, of course. And that's a reason that many businesses are not successful is the lack of funding.
Absolutely.
It saved us. And I think that's one thing that we have to learn as a community because we're not aware. I remember talking to this guy, Arlene and I were doing our business plan. He said, you don't have a rich uncle that you can get this money from? I'm like, actually, no, we don't have any rich uncles over here.
Hilarious. So how are you using your income to build wealth for the future? How are you investing?
That's a very good question. I use a framework in my head for everything. It's just the way that I operate. And if I would say that first phase of where we were, I would call that part survival. And so we've been such in a survival mode, even through this 8 years, we're just trying to survive. And because we didn't have funding, we always had to put our money back into our company. That's the only way that we can fund. And so I would say how we're investing in ourselves. We're investing in our company right now. We're probably going to have to continue to do that for I won't say foreseeable future, but for quite some time. And then as we continue to grow, we will invest in different services because what happens when you don't have seed money and you don't have funding, you just have to do what you can do. You can't look forward to the future. What if I want to develop an app? Well, I don't have funding to develop an app. So as funding comes in, now I'm saying, okay, I want to do workforce development. I want to develop an app. And so all of our funding is going into continuing to build Arlo out.
Well, I'm glad you clarified that because it still remains one of the 3 most popular ways to build wealth in America, right? Real estate, stock market, and having a business.
I mean, I tried stock market, doing it on my own outside of my 401k, and I wasn't so successful. So everyone has their lane, right? That's not mine. I need someone investing for me. And I like to control my money, to be honest. I'm one of the people that if I lost my money in Arlo, I'm okay. But if I gave you my money and you lost it in the stock market, it's devastating for me, right? For me specifically.
So we'll probably need to talk offline on ways that you can invest in the stock market without losing your money.
Yeah, I agree. I do it, right, with my 401k. And I have to focus my mind on this is long term, right? I'm not touching this. It'll go up and down. And I know all the logical, amazing things people say about the stock market, right? Which is true. But there's also a lot of downfalls. And I got hit with that. I think it's good, like many people say, to diversify. And certain things are personality dependent. Stock market for Lonye, I felt like I was gambling my money. It's an educated gamble, but I was like, I'm not feeling it so much unless it's long term.
Yeah,
But
I think it has to be long term. And I think, in the stock market, you don't lose until you sell. So if you don't sell, you're not losing.
And that's where I messed up. You hit the nail on the head. I needed to sell and I shouldn't have put it in short term like that. But I agree. I still put money in the stock market. In real estate, I have right now, I just purchased a home in Orlando and I'm doing short-term rentals by the Disney area. So I am a fan of real estate as well, because I think that's something that you can have that's tangible. And even in this rough time, you have this piece of property and this asset to sell. So those are ways personally that I'm using the money that I make.
Thank you for sharing that. So Lonye, I always end the interview with a round of rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Tell me about a book that changed your perspective on life.
7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
What's one life lesson you learned the hard way?
That corporate America is more gangsters than the gangsters on the street. They know how to get you with a smile and a document. You don't even know that you're being taken and they're smiling along the way. I learned that the hard way.
That's a good one. What's one thing about money you wish you could tell your younger self?
I don't know. Because I think because I don't have an emotional binding to money like many people have, I will remind myself that I'm the asset. I'm going to lose it and I'm going to make it back. I am the golden egg, right? Where I can lose my money, I make it back, and I've done it multiple times. And I think not being scared to lose has really paid off very well for me.
What's the best investment in yourself you've made so far?
Building Arlo.
Filling the blank in 3 words or less. Money to me is?
Access.
What do you want your legacy to be?
With every interaction, I made you better in some type of way.
So Lonye, thank you so much for stopping by the show. Please tell the dreamers where they can find you if they want to learn more about you and all the amazing things you're doing.
Thank you. Again, thank you for having me and thank you for allowing your audience access to not only me, but all the other amazing people who's been on the show. I think, again, representation is so important. You can find me on LinkedIn, Lonye Ford, Arlo-Solutions.com. You can also find me on Instagram, The Life of Lonye. So reach out. I had an amazing, fun time with you, Anne-Lyse. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you.